Malinganiso.
Mr. Speaker, sir, thank you for granting me latitude to air my views on the Constitution of Zimbabwe Amendment Number 3 Bill. Let me begin by stating that our actions or inactions as a House are guided by the prescriptions of the law, chief of which is the Constitution of Zimbabwe. Hence, we progress not on sentiment, but by way of applying our minds to these prescriptions and not our hearts. The book of Jeremiah reminds us that the heart is deceitful above all things and desperately corrupt. Our corrupted hearts must not prescribe a referendum where the Constitution does not. Our deceitful hearts must not promote redundancy where progress demands streamlining. Our hearts must not hold on to things that have not worked where reason demands heckling off the old and plan anew. I want, Mr. Speaker, to align myself with the mind and not the heart, because emotions are inherently subjective and none of us can dress them in objective guise with the exactness of a Jewish prophet. It is always difficult to tell whether the correct emotion is in the right Sunday apparel. Mr. Speaker, I rise in support of the bill, having traversed part of Mashonaland West and the Midlands provinces, gathering views and having carefully considered the report of the joint portfolio committees and the views expressed by citizens during public consultations. In approaching constitutional amendments of this nature, we must remind ourselves that constitutions are not ordinary pieces of legislation enacted to address temporary political concerns. They are thriving and enduring instruments that define the relationship between the state and its citizens, distribute public power, and establish the framework within which future generations may be governed. I say may in recognition that those that will come after us also possess wisdom, maybe better than us. It is therefore a practice in futility to say because this constitution was conjured in 2013 by people we considered great minds, it should remain static. Consequently, constitutional amendments must be assessed not on the basis of immediate political merit or demerit, but on whether they advance constitutionalism, democratic accountability, national unity, and effective governance. It is my considered view that the bill before us is in that spirit. Mr. Speaker, the first issue I wish to address is the proposal for the election of the president by Parliament. Much of the debate surrounding this proposal is focused on the mechanics of election. However, the real constitutional question is far deeper. It is a question about the source of democratic legitimacy and the manner in which political power should be exercised and controlled within a constitutional democracy. Modern constitutional systems recognize that democratic legitimacy may arise through different constitutional arrangements. Some democracies elect their heads of state directly through popular vote, whilst others elect them through representative institutions. Neither model is inherently more democratic than the other. What ultimately matters is whether those entrusted with power remain accountable to the people and subject to constitutional restraint. Parliament, Mr. Speaker, is not an abstract institution. It is the embodiment of the sovereign will of the people. Every member here seated in this chamber derives authority directly from citizens who entrusted us with the responsibility of governing on their behalf. Therefore, a president elected by Parliament remains a president elected by the people through their elected representatives. And in that regard, Honourable Mtodi was right. The legal principle is qui faciti per alium faciti per se. He who acts through the hand of another has done it himself. Mr. Speaker, one of the greatest challenges confronting many developing democracies is the tendency for presidential elections to become winner-takes-all contests that leave societies deeply polarized long after ballots have been counted. Once political competition becomes a struggle for absolute control of state power, elections cease to be contests of ideas and increasingly become contests of conquest and survival. The result is often prolonged political tension, disputed legitimacy, and national division. A parliamentary model, Mr. Speaker, offers an alternative constitutional logic. Rather than concentrating political legitimacy in a single electoral event, it encourages consensus building, compromise, and continuous accountability. Walter Bezos, a constitutional scholar, argued persuasively that the strength of parliamentary systems lay in the fusion of authority and accountability. The institution that confers power is the same institution that continuously scrutinizes its exercise. In such a framework, executive authority remains closely linked to democratic oversight. Comparative constitutional experience supports this proposition. The South African example has since been overemphasized. May I add that research has painted South Africa as one of the most violent nations globally, yet the same country is not known for political violence. Is it not common cause, therefore, Mr. Speaker, that the parliamentary system cures political polarization? Germany elects its chancellor through the Bundestag. These countries remain vibrant democracies because democratic legitimacy is not measured solely by the method of election, but by the accountability mechanisms that accompany the exercise of power. Mr. Speaker, there is a further dimension that deserves careful consideration. Sustainable national development flourishes where political stability exists and struggles where politics become a perpetual cycle of hostility and division. The extraordinary transformation of China from widespread poverty to becoming one of the world's leading economies was undergirded by policy consistency, political stability, and the ability to pursue long-term development objectives without being trapped in endless political contestation. While Zimbabwe's constitutional democracy fundamentally diverged from China's political system, there is an important lesson that transcends ideology. Nations develop faster when political energy is directed towards nation building rather than perpetual political conflict. I am not suggesting that Zimbabwe should replicate China's political model. Our constitution firmly commits us to democracy, constitutional governance, and the protection of fundamental rights and freedoms. However, we would not be as wise to ignore the obvious lesson that excessive political polarization consumes national energy that ought to be directed towards industrialization, infrastructure development, economic growth, and job creation. Constitutional arrangements should therefore encourage cooperation rather than confrontation, and consensus rather than perpetual division. Mr. Speaker, some have argued that democratic legitimacy can only arise through direct presidential elections. Respectively, that argument oversimplifies constitutional democracy. If democratic legitimacy depended solely on direct elections, then no parliamentary democracy could legitimately claim to be democratic. Yet many of the world's most stable and leading democracies elect their leaders through representative institutions. It is common cause that Al Gore won the popular vote, but it was George Bush who became the president, courtesy of the Electoral College. The same happened in the United States of America in 2016 when Hillary Clinton won the popular vote and lost the Electoral College to President Trump. Is it therefore correct to say America is not a democracy? Definitely no. Mr. Speaker said, democracy is not merely the act of voting every 5 years. Democracy is the continuous accountability of those who exercise public power. A president elected by parliament remains accountable to the state and its institutions. The true measure of democracy is therefore not the method of election alone, but whether power remains transparent, accountable, and constitutionally constrained. A parliament that has the right to impeach a president should exercise the right to elect one. Mr. Speaker said about the proposed amendment of the election cycle from 5 to 7 years. In Shona, let me say, ndikabata rekieni, Mr. Speaker, ndikaidonza, ikatatamuka, adzipedza ita mbiri. It has been ably demonstrated by the majority of speakers who spoke before me that a longer cycle would provide greater policy continuity and stability even in the face of deep political polarization. Large-scale economic reforms, infrastructure projects, agricultural modernization programs in the wake of climate change and related ecological challenges, and public sector restructuring often take many years before producing measurable results. A 7-year cycle reduces the pressure on governments to focus on short-term political gains ahead of elections and instead encourage longer-term planning and implementation. Less frequent elections lower the financial and administrative costs associated with organizing nationwide polls, allowing resources to be directed toward development priorities such as the progressive beam and AMTO facilities that are key in building human capital. Mr. Speaker, I now turn to the clause concerning traditional leaders. On this matter, I respectively depart from the proposed amendment and align myself with the recommendation of the committee that the current constitutional position should remain unchanged. The institution of traditional leadership occupies a unique place within Zimbabwe's constitutional framework. Unlike politicians, traditional leaders do not derive their authority from electoral competition. Their legitimacy derived from history, culture, custom, and the confidence reposed in them by entire communities. The wisdom of our constitution lies in its deliberate separation of political authority from traditional authority. Political leaders are expected to compete for support. Traditional leaders are expected to unite communities. Political actors represent interests and constituencies. Traditional leaders serve all members of their communities equally, regardless of political affiliation. This distinction is neither accidental nor symbolic. It is a carefully crafted constitutional safeguard designed to preserve social cohesion and national unity. Section 281 of the Constitution requires traditional leaders to remain politically neutral. That neutrality is not a restriction designed to weaken them. It is a constitutional shield designed to preserve the integrity, dignity, and legitimacy of the institution itself. It ensures that every citizen, regardless of political persuasion, can approach traditional institutions with confidence that they will be treated fairly and equally. Some may argue that preventing traditional leaders from participating in partisan politics infringes upon their political rights. Respectively, that argument overlooks an important constitutional principle. The Constitution often imposes restrictions on certain offices in order to preserve institutional independence. Judges are prohibited from partisan political activity to safeguard judicial impartiality. So are members of the security sector. The traditional leaders, Mr. Speaker, are no different. The limitation is not directed at the individual, but at the office they hold. Once traditional leaders become active participants in partisan politics, their role inevitably changes. They cease to be impartial custodians of communal interests and become actors within political competition. Communities become divided between supporters and opponents, and traditional institutions risk losing the moral authority that has sustained them for generations. Mr. Speaker, at the outset, let me state unequivocally that gender equality is a constitutional imperative. The Constitution guarantees equality, dignity, and freedom from discrimination. The advancement of women and girls must remain a central objective of our constitutional order. However, Mr. Speaker, the issue before us is not whether gender rights are important. The issue is whether the continued existence of a standalone constitutional commission remains institutionally necessary. Constitutional commissions are exceptional bodies established because ordinary governmental structures are deemed insufficient to protect particular constitutional values. Their existence must therefore be justified by constitutional necessity, specialized expertise, and demonstrable effectiveness. The question Parliament must ask is not whether the Commission performs important work. The question is whether that work can be performed equally effectively within a strengthened and specialized human rights framework. Where constitutional mandates substantially overlap, Parliament is entitled to consider whether institutional consolidation would enhance coherence, reduce duplication, and improve efficiency without diminishing the protection of rights. Constitutional governance is not measured by the number of institutions we create. It is measured by the effectiveness of those institutions in protecting citizens and advancing constitutional values. The objective, Mr. Speaker, should never be the preservation of institutions for their own sake. The objective must always be the effective protection of constitutional rights. If the same outcomes can be achieved through a strengthened Zimbabwe Human Rights Commission while maintaining specialized protection for women and girls, then Parliament is entitled to consider that option in the interest of good governance and prudent utilization of public resources. May I pose a few questions? Would we have the current debate if the proposition was to place the Human Rights Commission under the Gender Commission? In my view, we would not. May I invite this House to shun sentimentalism and apply our minds. The second question is whether or not gender rights are human rights. In my respectful view, there is seldom a difference. The third question is whether or not gender refers solely to women. It is common cause that gender speaks to both male and female, shortened for humans, and gender rights remain human rights. There is no mischief in doing away with the Gender Commission, in creating a strengthened Human Rights Commission, boasting a specialized department on gender equality. Mr. Speaker, history teaches us that nations rarely fail because they lack resources. More often, they fail because they allow division to overwhelm national purpose and permit political contestation to eclipse developmental priorities. The enduring strength of any constitutional order lies in its ability to create stable institutions, promote accountability, preserve social cohesion, and provide a framework within which development can flourish. The constitutional choices we make today must therefore be guided.
Member, you have 2 minutes to wind up.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The constitutional choices we make today must therefore be guided by the overriding question: do they strengthen the Second Republic and improve the lives of the people of Zimbabwe? In my respectful view, the greater part of this bill answers that question in the affirmative. It seeks to create a constitutional framework capable of promoting stability, accountability, and effective governance, whilst preserving the values upon which our democracy is founded. The people of Zimbabwe expect us not merely to debate constitutional provisions, but to build a constitutional order capable of delivering prosperity, unity, opportunity, and justice for future generations. If not now, then when? If not us, then who? In 1789, Mr. Speaker, James Madison said, and I quote, "If in the opinion of the people, the distribution or modification of the constitutional powers be in any particular wrong, let it be corrected by an amendment in the way which the Constitution designates." Parliament, Mr. Speaker, followed the prescriptions of Section 328 of the Constitution of Zimbabwe. Those that sought to associate with the proposed amendments either for or against, did attend public hearings and forwarded written submissions in the affirmative or the contrary. The report of the Joint Committee, composed of members from across the House, does attest to the fact that the majority of those who participated are in favor of the propositions. Section 141 of the Constitution of Zimbabwe enjoins Parliament to consult the public, not every individual, not every household, not every village or every ward. It has been demonstrated by Honourable Tafanana Show that in scope this current consultation is even better than COPAC. Democracy by its nature is merely taking directives from the majority, and that was done. Who are we to deny the voice of the majority? Who are we to prescribe a referendum when in their numbers in 2013 the people of Zimbabwe didn't so direct? For the above reasons, Mr. Speaker, I support the bill subject to the reservations I've expressed regarding traditional leadership. I thank you.
Thank you, Honourable Member. Just to remember that when you make a quotation, you open the quotation and you must close it for purposes of record.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I also do next time.
Thank you. Honourable